Tree sitters who oppose the Mountain Valley Pipeline continue their protest in West Virginia. How much longer is uncertain now that a judge has granted an injunction.
We wanted to hear from the tree sitters ourselves. So WDBJ7's Joe Dashiell climbed to the top of Peters Mountain.
With a sharp eye, or better yet, a long lens, you can see the tree sitters from the road below Peters Mountain. But to get up close and within earshot, it's a bit more complicated. Monroe County resident Maury Johnson drove us as far as a private logging road would take us.
This is normally the way we come up.
Roanoke Times reporter Jeff Sturgeon, photographer Erica Yoon, and I then made a steep climb to the ridgeline above, followed by a 10-minute hike on the Appalachian Trail to the point where the pipeline would cross. The tree sitters are 25 to 30 feet off the ground in platforms that are secured with ropes and covered with plastic, and they've been buffeted by the high winds up here on the top of Peters Mountain. Do you feel safe up there?
Yeah, I'm very safe up here.
We didn't see anyone else on the ground, but one of the tree sitters did poke her head out from under the plastic. She said she wanted to remain anonymous, but told us why they are there.
Our intentions are to defend this piece of land. If we're in this tree, they can't cut it, or they can't cut nearby trees without endangering our lives.
She said she'd been there since late last month and viewed the protest as a fight against the ways that big business exploits land for its own financial benefit.
To defend and protect the land and water in which West Virginians and Virginians survive off of.
The tree sitters are located in an area where construction crews plan to drill beneath the Appalachian Trail. The company must complete tree felling in the area by the end of the month because of rules protecting endangered bats, so the clock is running. We requested comment from the company, and we'll share that information when we hear from a spokesperson. But Gene and Robin, we don't know when the company and the Forest Service might try to evict the tree sitters from the pipeline right-of-way. It won't surprise me if that happens in the next few days.
Our top story tonight, crews cutting trees for the Mountain Valley Pipeline have moved into Roanoke County, and today a standoff between protesters and workers led to arrest. Senior reporter Joe Dashiell is live tonight on Bent Mountain. So Joe, you were there when the arrests were made today, I understand.
Well, Robin, we heard the sound of chainsaws all day up here on Bent Mountain on a number of different parcels in this area. But it was one parcel in particular where protesters stood in the way of a work crew that drew the attention of Roanoke County Police. The Mountain Valley Pipeline has permission from federal regulators to cut trees in the pipeline corridor. And when a group of protesters gathered near the right-of-way and prevented a crew from continuing its work, Roanoke County Police responded.
This is the direction we received from the Commonwealth Attorney's Office. He's the chief prosecutor in the county of Roanoke.
The officer told protesters they would have to step back 160 feet, or about 2 tree lengths, to allow the work to continue safely. When a young woman refused to leave, she was arrested, and police said they also had an outstanding warrant for another member of the group.
They're cutting trees right now, and people are getting arrested for trying to stand in the way, for trying to say, this is wrong, you're not allowed to do this.
The land where pipeline opponents made their stand belongs to Mary Beth Coffey. The sound of chainsaws and the sight of trees falling near her home was painful.
I've hiked among these trees many times and have strong attachment to these trees, so it's been very difficult to watch them take my friends away.
Pipeline opponents say the work should have stopped at the end of March to protect endangered species, including some bats, but the company says it has completed all of the work in areas with time-of-year restrictions. Robin, the work will continue here on Bent Mountain, but residents of the area who oppose the pipeline say they aren't going away either.
A lot of emotion up on Bent Mountain today, and Joe Dashiell has our coverage for us tonight. Thank you.
Red Terry began her pipeline protest over 2 weeks ago. Along with her daughter, who's located in another tree stand nearby, she's preventing Mountain Valley Pipeline crews from completing tree felling on the family's Bent Mountain property.
So I stand with Red.
When a group of lawmakers raised concerns about the state's oversight of the pipeline project on Wednesday in Richmond, speakers also criticized local authorities for cutting off supplies from supporters.
Starving somebody in Virginia is unacceptable in the 21st century for exercising your First Amendment right to protest in your own tree on your own land.
Yes. What I heard yesterday was not factual and was, in my mind, unduly derisive of our public safety officers that are handling the incident in Roanoke County.
Roanoke County Chief of Police Howard Hall says the department hasn't taken sides in the pipeline dispute, but is obligated to enforce a valid court order. While authorities have denied a request for cigarettes and stopped supporters from delivering supplies, Hall said Roanoke County is ensuring the tree sitters' physical needs are met.
I absolutely take issue to the suggestion that we've deprived anybody of anything. I think that we have gone out of our way to continually assess what's going on up there and the physical condition of the folks in the trees, and we will continue to do that.
The county has been making daily wellness checks, and so far Hall says there's no indication the tree sitters have run out of food and water or have other medical issues. They are facing charges. A magistrate issued warrants on Wednesday. But for now, Hall says the department is trying to be patient as it encourages the tree sitters to come down. Joe Dashiell, WDBJ 7.
Governor Ralph Northam says he has confidence in the Virginia Department of Environmental Quality and the state's ability to monitor and regulate construction of the Mountain Valley Pipeline.
Well, today we asked him to respond to the concerns of state lawmakers who say the state isn't doing enough. And WDBJ7's Joe Dashiell joins us now with that part of the story.
Gene and Robin, it was just a week ago that a group of state lawmakers, including 3 from our area, called on Governor Northam to strengthen environmental review and enforcement for the Mountain Valley and the Atlantic Coast Pipeline. Today, we asked him to respond. Are you confident the DEQ is up to the challenge?
Absolutely. The DEQ is doing good work.
Governor Northam spoke with reporters before he helped Carilion New River Valley Medical Center flip the switch on 4,000 new solar panels. Despite lawmakers' concerns that Virginia isn't providing adequate oversight, he defended the state's handling of the pipeline projects and said the Department of Environmental Quality will hold the pipeline companies to high standards.
We're using some of the most stringent parameters environmentally that have ever been used for these projects in Virginia. I have a lot of faith, confidence in our DEQ. I need to let them do their work. We want to do this with science. We want to do it by the law, and we want to do it with transparency. And so that's what I've focused on.
Last week, lawmakers called for a stream-by-stream analysis of every point where these 2 pipelines would cross Virginia waterways. We asked the governor if he's reviewing that request. Well, Robin and Jean, he didn't offer a definitive response, but he told us that state officials are working with DEQ and the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers to make sure that if the project moves forward, it moves forward in an environmentally responsible way.
We begin with new developments tonight on Bent Mountain in Roanoke County, where Air 7 captured these images of the Mountain Valley Pipeline right-of-way this morning. Landowners have asked a federal judge to stop the tree cutting there while she considers legal issues that could have an impact on the project. Tonight, they are also raising concerns about sensitive water resources and a Native American burial ground they fear the pipeline will harm. WDBJ7's Joe Dashiell is live there tonight. So Joe, there's a lot going on. Bring us up to speed on everything that's happening.
Well, Robin, I'm standing below the tree stand that Red Terry has occupied since early April. Her protest here was the subject of a hearing in federal court earlier this week. And while we're waiting for the judge to rule, her husband, the landowner, Coles Terry, has asked the judge to stop the work. Tree felling continued Thursday on the property of Fred Vest. Air 7 flew over the ridge near his home, where most of the trees in the path of the pipeline have already been taken down, and her crew was working on those that remain. With a judge considering a variety of motions that could affect the work, pipeline opponents say the cutting should stop until the judge issues a ruling.
It would be in keeping with the court's decision to hear the matter and in keeping with the evidence that she heard the other day.
The chainsaws haven't reached Kathy Chandler's property yet, and she still hopes MVP will adjust the route to avoid sensitive water resources. and a Native American burial ground recently identified by tribal representatives.
I have to say they gasped when they saw it and declared that it is a Siouan sepulcher.
The site is now surrounded by plastic fencing, but it remains within a few feet of the project's center line. Chandler says MVP has an opportunity to do the right thing and protect the burial ground. The best protection, she says, is avoidance.
Having a burial ground on your property is a really important thing, and I don't think it should be disturbed.
I think it's very important that the pipeline moves, because even if it's moved just a little bit over, the blasting and everything will still disrupt a site that's supposed to be peaceful and respected.
So it was a busy day here on Bent Mountain with a number of different issues. Tomorrow, the focus will shift back to federal court, Robin, and the tree sitters in Franklin County who continue their protest against the Mountain Valley Pipeline there.
Over the last few weeks, we've seen a rush of activities surrounding the Mountain Valley Pipeline. Protesters are sitting in trees in Peters Mountain in West Virginia. In Giles County, workers clashed with landowners as they cleared trees along the pipeline's path. And pipeline opponents on Bent Mountain still have questions after an archaeological dig got underway there. Now that the DEQ has approved water quality plans, pipeline construction could be next. WDBJ7's Joe Dashiell has reaction from Montgomery County.
Even when we couldn't see the crews and their chainsaws, we could hear their handiwork in the Mount Tabor section of Montgomery County. And landowners like Donna Jones aren't happy to see their trees coming down.
It makes me angry, and it makes me frustrated and really sad.
So far, contractors have been felling trees in the pipeline corridor, but construction could soon follow. The Department of Environmental Quality has approved plans it says will protect water quality, authorizing MVP to begin activities that will disturb the land. Tom Triplett showed us his property where melting snow has filled creeks and springs and water is bubbling up in the middle of the pipeline right-of-way.
You know, what's going to happen when they put a 10-foot ditch in there, and it's going to destroy or disturb the aquifers underneath the surface, and we don't know what it's doing down there.
The Department of Environmental Quality says protecting water quality and water supplies is the agency's greatest concern. But opponents in Montgomery County question whether the agency has done its homework in an area of steep terrain that's riddled with sinkholes, caves, and water that flows underground.
Unless you're on the ground and you see these slopes and you have personnel out here to monitor this, which they're not going to have, this can't be done. No, the water resource here is going to be damaged.
A spokesperson for the Mountain Valley Pipeline said the company has worked diligently to identify a route with the least overall impact. And the company said it appreciates the rigorous review by the Department of Environmental Quality. MVP says it can't provide a definitive start date for construction. It says the project is on track to be completed and in operation by the end of the year. In Montgomery County, Joe Dashiell, WDBJ7.
And that heavy rain also caused problems in Franklin County, where runoff from the route of the Mountain Valley Pipeline left a thick layer of mud and raised new concerns about that project. WDBJ7's Joe Dashiell continues our team coverage tonight. Joe, what happened there?
Well, Jane, we're just outside Boone's Mill. This happened not far from here on Cahays Mountain Road. Now, overnight torrential rains washed soil from the pipeline right-of-way, blocking the road with a thick layer of mud. Crews hired by the Mountain Valley Pipeline were busy for most of the day, clearing mud from the pavement and the right-of-way and hauling it away.
This was taken approximately an hour ago. The water still looks the same now. This was a sample of how it looked about 9 o'clock this morning.
Landowner Wendell Flora showed us water samples from the creek that runs alongside Cahays Mountain Road. He and his brother Charles say erosion is something they've worried about since they learned the pipeline was coming through their property.
I witnessed a truck back in, a heavy-duty dump truck that got up not to its axle but to the middle part of the wheel. It's just miring in mud, and they've got a heavy-duty grader just picking up scoop after scoop after scoop.
Myself and others have been trying to tell people for months and years what was going to happen, and this is proof positive.
Now, MVP says that no streams or wetlands were affected, blaming that muddy water on the heavy rain. Now, MVP says that its initial review indicates that the proper controls were in place, but the cause remains under investigation. Gene, pipeline opponents say they expect to see more of this as construction and clearing continue.
A pipeline protester attached herself to heavy equipment in hopes of blocking the construction of the Mountain Valley Pipeline. Now the question is, how will authorities get her down? And WDBJ7's Joe Dashiell is live in Montgomery County. He has an update on that. Joe, has anything changed in the last little while?
Well, Robin, we've certainly seen a flurry of activity in the last hour. Authorities are bringing in 2 cherry pickers, and the heavy equipment has been working to level the ground around the excavator where Emily Satterwhite has been protesting for the last 12 hours.
Does the State Water Control Board know what's going on out here?
Satterwhite shouted to her supporters and reporters who had gathered nearby, questioning the response of state regulators to concerns about environmental damage.
Don't they understand how much we need them to stand up and protect our water and protect human health?
As MVP workers huddled nearby, state police warned Satterwhite that she was violating state law.
This time I'm going to give you another opportunity to come down and go in the court.
But for most of the day, they made no attempt to remove her from the excavator.
She's a mother, she's a professor at Virginia Tech. This isn't something, an action she's taken lightly.
As 2 natural gas pipelines move closer to construction in Virginia, opponents are still hoping to head off the controversial projects. Today, Red and Minor Terry and others who are fighting the Mountain Valley Pipeline joined a Richmond protest against the Atlantic Coast Pipeline. WDBJ7's Joe Dashiell is live in Richmond tonight with that story. So, Joe, what happened in Richmond today?
Well, Robin, there are 2 different pipelines, 2 different routes through the state of Virginia. And while each of these projects has its own unique set of opponents, they've been working together to reach a wider audience. And today's events here in Richmond were a good example of that. On a street corner near the Richmond Convention Center, pipeline opponents vied for the attention of drivers and shareholders of Dominion Energy who were meeting nearby. Red and Minor Terry were there, with others from southwestern Virginia who are fighting the Mountain Valley Pipeline. And so were landowners like Lynn and Bill Limpert, whose property in Bath County lies in the path of the Atlantic Coast Pipeline.
We think that more and more people are learning about it, and we've always felt, and still do, that the more people that know about these pipelines, the more are on our side.
This project is going to serve a vital public need.
Aaron Ruby is a spokesperson for the Atlantic Coast Pipeline. He acknowledges there's a diversity of opinion, but says there are millions of people who will benefit from the project.
It's going to provide cleaner, more reliable electricity to millions of homes and businesses in Virginia. It's going to lower consumer energy costs. It's going to help rebuild our manufacturing economy.
Opponents say they believe more Virginians are waking up to what they describe as the major downside to these pipeline projects.
And I really think that here in the 9th hour, that Dominion is starting to tremble. They've gotten more of a backlash from this. They had no idea that we were going to be as organized as we are.
And it doesn't end here with the events today in Richmond. Red and Minor Terry were headed to Northern Virginia for a press conference and rally. They'll be in Waynesboro tomorrow. And Robin, they say their campaign in the Roanoke Valley and beyond is just beginning.
The pipeline protests that kept Red and Minor Terry in 2 tree stands for almost 5 weeks ended Saturday afternoon. This is video of the 2 women coming down just hours before they would have faced stiff fines and sanctions. But the mother and daughter say they will continue to oppose the Mountain Valley Pipeline in different ways. WDBJ7's Joe Dashiell is live tonight on Bent Mountain with that story. Joe.
Gene, Red and Minor Terry climbed into their tree stands in early April. They blocked the path of the Mountain Valley Pipeline for over a month. But when they came down on Saturday, crews with chainsaws moved in quickly. Some of the signs are still there, but the trees Red and Minor Terry climbed for their pipeline protest are now on the ground. This is the same area on Saturday afternoon when Red Terry climbed down a ladder to end her tree sit.
I got their attention, now let's go ahead and start the fight.
Both women said they left their tree stands with mixed emotions, looking forward to a hot shower, good food, and the company of family and friends.
Minor! Woo!
But understanding they had not stopped the pipeline.
Now that we're out of the trees, that people don't forget about us, don't forget what we're fighting for, and that we went up there for a reason, and that has not been accomplished.
I want them to know that I haven't finished fighting.
This week they're spending time in Charlottesville, Richmond, and Northern Virginia with the goal of rallying more opposition to the Mountain Valley and Atlantic Coast pipelines.
I'm hoping that people will understand that average people can fight, because they don't get any more average than I am, and they can fight.
A spokesperson for the Mountain Valley Pipeline declined comment today, but we did receive more information from Roanoke County. The county is still tallying the costs of the tree sit in terms of overtime and the cost of supplies, Gene, but an early estimate indicates that figure could be around $50,000.
All right, Joe, and you certainly can see where trees have come down behind you there on Bent Mountain. Thanks for that update. For the second time in 1 week, a protest against the Mountain Valley Pipeline has landed in federal court. Today, the company asked a judge to hold the owners of a Franklin County farm in contempt of court. WDBJ7's Joe Dashiell has our update.
3 tree stands tower over Teal Creek in an area where the Mountain Valley Pipeline would cross Four Corners Farm. When we visited last month, at least one person was occupying one of the platforms. Landowners Carolyn and Ian Riley didn't construct the tree stands, and they haven't climbed the trees. But the Mountain Valley Pipeline says they should be held in contempt of court for allowing the protest.
I think that they don't like it when we speak up as citizens, as landowners.
MVP's lawyers didn't comment outside the courthouse. But during the hearing, they said the 4 owners of Four Corners Farm violated a court order by supporting protesters whose goal is to stop construction of the natural gas pipeline. The landowner's attorney said her clients have exercised their right to free speech, but haven't violated the court order.
Particularly when it's on your own property or on your own, in your own fields, you know, your own fences, you know, your own trees. It feels like we ought to be able to say how we feel.
The company says it's unfortunate it had to take additional legal action to enforce an existing injunction. But we don't know yet how the judge will rule. She'll make a decision, she told the court, as quickly as she can. In Roanoke, Joe Dashiell, WDBJ7.
Opponents of the Mountain Valley Pipeline have been warning about the impact of construction. And after recent heavy rains, they're saying, "We told you so." Last week, mud from a pipeline right-of-way blocked a road in Franklin County, and now some of the residents of Montgomery County say they fear the work is threatening their water. WDBJ7's Joe Dashiell has our update now. Joe, what are the latest concerns coming out of it?
Well, Robin, work on the pipeline is picking up in places like the Catawba Valley, and neighbors who've been fearful of the project believe they're now seeing the negative effects.
I'm 62 years old and never have seen mud in this area before. There's no development or disturbed areas around here, so it had to come underground.
The muddy water that David Hancock first noticed last Friday in this spring-fed pond alarmed his neighbor, Linda Sink.
We were extremely upset and fearful that it could also have breached our true water supply, which is up towards Mill Creek.
Sink's property doesn't lie in the path of the Mountain Valley Pipeline, but it's close, and the work is progressing there, with the chainsaws giving way to heavy equipment. These images from Air 7 show the work that's underway, from the trucks hauling pipe on Catawba Road to the sections laid end-to-end in the pipeline right-of-way and the path crews have cleared on the steep slope of Paris Mountain. When we visited the area Wednesday night, former tree sitter Red Terry was there in solidarity, saying her neighbors on Bent Mountain and the residents of Catawba have been sharing a similar message for the people of Western Virginia.
This is Roanoke River water here, Mill Creek. That's Smith Mountain Lake, that's Salem, that's Roanoke, and it's going to affect them all, and they need to get out of their safety bubble and start paying attention to what's happening around them.
The Mountain Valley Pipeline says the Department of Environmental Quality has imposed unprecedented erosion and sediment control plans that cover every foot of the project in Virginia. The company says the depth of the pipeline trench is expected to range from 7 to 10 feet, far above the depth typically associated with drinking aquifers. And MVP says it has a water resource identification and testing plan and a complaint resolution process. Robin, opponents have been sharing their concerns with the Department of Environmental Quality, and the department will be taking additional comments on these issues through the end of this month.
Joe, you've been covering this extensively over the last few weeks. Do you sense that there's more organization? Do you sense that people are starting to come together in a broad area?
Well, there are a lot of different elements to the opposition, a lot of different groups, individuals involved, but they are, I think, coming together in a way to try to make their case in the most effective way they can.
Exactly. Joe Dashiell, thank you.